Hello, Anarcoders, and welcome. In the last episode, we talked about variables, and in this episode, we're going to talk about data types. So the data type is a classification of data that specifies the type of operations that you can do with them. In Python, there are several different types: an integer, a boolean, a float, and a string. An integer is a whole number: 1, -1, 0, any number that is whole. A float is a decimal number, such as 2.5, -0.1. Anything that has a decimal, that is a float. A boolean is a binary variable that's either true or false. And in Python, you write true and false with a capital as the first letter, while in other languages you don't. And a string is a sequence of characters. It can say anything you want: hello world, hi there. Any kind of sequence of characters is called a string, and that's made with a quotation mark. So let's start off by writing our variables. So let's write our first variable, which is a integer type, and we're going to write my underscore integer equals 2, and then my underscore float equals 2.5, and my underscore bool for boolean equals false. And you see that when I write that, the actual word is highlighted in blue to tell you that this is a boolean, not just the word false. And actually, if you use false or true as a variable name with a capital F, the debugger will yell at you and tell you that you shouldn't be doing that because it's already set to a value. And finally, my string is equal to hello world. Now we write it with a underscore between the words because in Python you write names as a snake case. And this is called a naming convention, and it's important because it helps with readability and maintenance of code. If everybody writes with snake case, then everybody can debug code that's in snake case and they can read it easily. In other languages, they use what's called camel case. So rather than writing an underscore, they just write it uppercase. But in Python, you write with an underscore to keep everything uniform. And so now let's use the type function to show you what type each variable is. So actually, if you print and you write type of my string, you will see the return says that the class is str, or string. You can do the same thing for each one and see my integer is an int, my float is a float, and my boolean is a boolean. Okay. So let's talk about typecasting. So typecasting is taking a data type of one type and changing it into a data type of another type. And I'll explain why this is important. So if we wanted to print that there are 2.5 liters of water in my water bottle, this will give me an error. And the error will say it's a type error because the types don't match. You cannot add a float or a non-string to a string. So how do you fix this? Well, you do something called typecasting. So there are functions in Python that help you change one type to another. So if you write str around my float, that takes the 2.5, and essentially you could think about it as putting the quotation marks around it for you. So because you can't write in quotations my float, because then it'll just print my float, if you write str around it and press run, it turns it into a string. And this is called typecasting. It's changing one type to another. And you can actually do that in another way. So for example, if I change my string to, say, the string 567, and I wanted to print out my string, I can write int my string, and it'll print 567. And you might think to yourself, why would I want to do that? Well, let's say you have a string that is a number, and you want to add something to it, for example. So you can write int my string plus 5, and boom, 572, which is 5 plus 567. So that's typecasting, and these are data types. In the next lesson, we'll be covering conditional statements, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching.